Hey everyone, back again for yet another deck profile update. This time it's Dark Lair Dinosaurs, and today, I made a lot of changes to it this time. Hopefully you guys will enjoy it, and if you notice, I finally got my hands on a Saryuja Skuldred, which um, which I'll go over some other update videos because I found that Saryuja really gave a few of my other decks some synergy. But yeah, more on that later. Let's go and get started. Okay, so starting off, we're running 3 copies of our boy Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. Since it's still focused mostly on the dinosaurs, he's going to be your primary boss monster of this deck. And don't worry, he's not bricky. Well, I mean, sometimes you will brick, but not often. But this deck is pretty consistent, so definitely run this guy at 3. But you can summon him by banishing 2 dinosaurs from your graveyard. And also, you can also use the effects of Double Evolution Pill to ignore summoning conditions. But the fact that he's got 3,500 attack points, it's really great. And once during either player's main phase, you can destroy one monster on the field, and basically you Book of Eclipse all your opponent's monsters, as I mentioned on the last video. And he can attack all monsters, and whenever he attacks a monster in defense mode, he doesn't destroy it; he just sends it to the graveyard, which is very unfortunate. So no destruction effects for anybody, and also he inflicts 1,000 points of damage for every monster that was sent to the graveyard that was in defense mode that way. All right, moving on, we have 2 copies of Overtext Quatless. As long as you send them to the graveyard without using a cost effect, and someone actually pointed this out or asked me around the comments. He asked if could you use Twin Twisters to send Quatless to still get your Double Evolution Pill. Well, from what I've learned, you can't use an effect that requires a cost to trigger Overtext Quatless's effect. Reason being, from one of my friends, he told me because he's a judge. It's because that effect must fully resolve, and since Quatless's effect is starts on a separate chain, it's not quick effect. Essentially, you lose the entire timing of being able to get a Double Evolution Pill, which is why you cannot use Twin Twisters for him. But you can use cards like Foolish Burial, Armageddon Knight, Oviraptor. Those will work. But cards like let's say if you wanted to use a Lightsworn version of Dinosaurs, if you use Charge of the Light Brigade and you mill those 3 cards, you're not going to be able to trigger off his effect if he's one of those cards that got milled. So bear in mind, as long as it's an effect that is not cost, you will be able to get Quatless effect to add Double Evolution Pill when he's sent to the graveyard. But another good thing about Quatless is that you can shuffle back 5 dinosaurs, banished ones at least, from your banish zone back to your main deck, and you can special summon them that way as well, or use Double Evolution Pill. And once during either player's turn, you can destroy 1 dinosaur monster and its quick effect whenever your opponent activates a spell or trap card. So it's really good. Moving on, we have 3 copies of Soul Eating Oviraptor. Basically, he's Foolish Burial, and he can also search out dinosaurs too. But you use him to send Quatless to the graveyard or add Ultimate Conductor Tyranno from your deck to your hand, so he's really great. And once per turn, you can pop 1 dinosaur and special summon 1 level 4 dinosaur type monster from your graveyard back to your side of the field. So he's pretty good. One of the best dinosaur monsters out there. We have 2 copies of Giant Rex. Yeah, I know, but 2 is actually really good because you can use him for Evolution Pill fodder. Because once he's banished, you can bring him back from the banish zone once per turn. So yeah, he special summons himself that way, and he also gains 200 attack points for every banished dinosaur. But he can't attack directly, which is unfortunate. But still, he's really good. He's really good, and the fact that he's a 2K beat stick. So yeah, I highly recommend it. Of course, we have 1 Miscellaneousaurus, which unfortunately is only at 1, and 1 Jurek Alo. So by now everyone should know what Miscellaneousaurus does, but you discard him from your hand during either player's turn, and your opponent cannot touch your dinosaur monsters by card effects only during the main phases. So battle phase, they're sitting ducks. And Jurek Alo is just because, he's a tuner, and he helps me bring out Trish a lot faster. So okay, now that we're done with the Dinosaur engine, now we move on to the Dark Lair engine. So starting off, we have 2 copies of Darkus Diabolus. I tried to run him at 3, but he's too bricky, so I decided to just run him at 2. Because we're not unlike my other Lair of Darkness, which is the Fang of Critias one, this deck does not rely too much on the tribute summoning effects of Lilith, where you basically search out trap cards. We still run traps, don't get me wrong. But he's just there just because he's a 3K beat stick. He cannot be targeted, and he cannot be tributed by your opponent, so that's the only reason why you ever run him. And of course, we have 3 copies of Arima. Reason at 3 is because, he's our terraforming of the deck. We need to get that Lair of Darkness out. But, yeah. Lair of Darkness is great because, you can produce tokens at the end of every turn and so on. And also, Arima also helps out with extra draw power and search out our Darkest Diabolus. But, he also searches out Overtext Quatless, believe it or not. He lets you search out, whenever you tribute one other dark monster other than himself, you can target one dark monster in your deck with 2,000 or more defense and add it to your hand. So yeah. And since Quatless barely makes that requirement, he's at 2,100, you could literally search it out with Arima. Now for Lilith, which we have right here, we decided to bump her down to, or I decided to bump her down, my fault. I decided to bump her down to just 2 only now because 3 was starting to get a little situational. But we still make advantage of her effect to tribute off your opponent's monsters. That way we can get rid of anything that's problematic and search out our main traps, which I'll show you a little later. But yeah, she's great. But again, 2 is actually a little bit better than 3 in this deck because after you use her ability and once she leaves the field, she just becomes expendable for the double evolution pill. But of course, moving on, we also have 2 copies of Armageddon Eye, which also helps out getting Quatless's effect triggered off. You can also send out like Destrudo. And of course, Miscellaneous Source if you want to use his banishment effect to summon a dinosaur of a certain level. And of course, I did mention we run Destrudo. You pay half your life points if this card is in your hand, and you target one level 6 or lower monster. Special summon it, and he reduces level based on whatever level your monster was. So like if you target level 4, he becomes a level 3, and so on. And for the other hand traps we have is just 2 copies of DD Crow. Comes in really good handy because we do run Grinning Grave Virus, so it's a good way to deal with get rid of like certain monsters your opponent can use graveyard effects later. Because thanks to Grinning Grave, your opponent can't use any monster effects on the same turn it's activated, so that's really great. Or, I mean, like, he can't use any monsters' effects in the graveyard if you destroy them through the effect of Grinning Grave is probably the better way I should have worded that. But anyway, moving on. Of course, we run 3 copies of Lair of Darkness. Turns everything on the field into dark monsters, so it really helps out a lot. And the fact that whenever you perform an effect that requires a tribute, you can tribute one of your opponent's monsters once per turn. And then, of course, at the end of every turn, based on whoever turns it is, you get to special summon as many torment tokens as to the number of monsters that were tributed on that person's turn, and they go to that person's side of the field. Alright, now, of course, we run 3 copies of Fossil Dig. Pretty great card because it's literally not once per turn, and so if you open up with 2 of them, that's fine, It doesn't hurt you if you open up with 2 because like you can search out Oviraptor and Miscellaneous Source all in one hand. So that's why it's a great card. A little busted in its own right, but you know what? What can you do, right? Now, for the double evolution pills, we run this at 3. Because, since you're going to be running 3 Tyrannos and 2 Quatlesses, you got to get those boss monsters out as quickly as possible. And, of course, Darkest Diabolus is a bonus. So, that's why you may as well just go and run this at 3. Now, I found this card a bit of a hindrance at 3, so I decided to bump it down just to 2. Lair of Darkness. Because not every monster in your deck is dark type, like Giant Rex, Miscellaneous Source, Jurek Elo. Even Tyrannos as a light attribute monster, so that's why I thought Lair of Darkness became a little bit of a hindrance. So, but if you open up with like 2 Quatlesses and one of these, then you can go and spare one of those Oviraptors. So never hesitate to do that. Now, as for our traps that we search out through the effect of Lilith, or if we open up with one, that'd be great too. We got 2 copies of Grinning Grave Virus. As I mentioned, this card requires a dark type monster with 3,000 or less attack. And let's say you tributed off Darkest Diabolus, which is the only target we're going to be able to use, or any other of our weaker monsters. But, since Darkest Diabolus is 3,000 attack exact, divide that by 500, that's 6 monsters, so your opponent has to destroy 6 monsters. And of course, as I just mentioned, your opponent can't activate any of those monsters' effects in the graveyard on the turn that they were destroyed by the effect of Grinning Grave. And of course, this effect will linger for 3 turns. So, for 3 turns, you get to check your opponent's hands after his draw phase and destroy any monsters among them. So that's also really good. For our other virus card, which is Eradicator, you want to get rid of like problematic spells and traps, or just keep your opponent from using any spells or traps, which could be a threat. Like against Sky Strikers, definitely a great card to use because Sky Strikers are super spell heavy, so you gotta get rid of all their spells. And of course, just in case, since these cards do prevent us from looking at our opponent's entire hand, we run 2 copies of Mind Crush. So yeah, these are our primary traps that we run, and honestly, I think that's the best ones you should run for Dark Lair dinos. So yeah. Alright, so moving on to the extra deck, we have 2 copies of Link Spider. Since you'll be producing tokens quite a bit, I figured why not run 2 Link Spiders, just so that way you can have a higher chance of getting some of your higher boss monster Link monsters. 1 Proxy Dragon, which only just requires 2 monsters, but it counts as 2 effect monsters. So, easy to make a Decode Talker in this deck. 1 Underclock Taker, of course, since its arrow points down, but it requires 2 effect monsters. Now, I decided to run this because this actually helped out a lot. 1 copy of Curious, since it just requires 3 monsters of the same attribute, but of 3 different types, and that's actually fairly simple to do because not every card in our deck is Dinosaur or Fiend. Some are Dragon and some are Warrior, so that's why it really helps out. So definitely run Curious. I definitely recommend it. And of course we run Decode Talker, which is standard. We also have Trigate Wizard, which is starting to become really relevant for today's meta. So yeah, Trigate Wizard is definitely a must, because especially if he's co-linked to 3 monsters, you can pretty much negate and banish anything. 1 Firewall. Of course, every deck runs Firewall now, so it really comes in handy too. And of course, our newest addition, Saryuja. It's really easy to fill up your board with monsters, so if you use 4 monsters to summon them, you can just draw 4 cards, pick 1, and the other 3 go to the bottom of your deck in any order. And then, of course, from there you also get to special summon 1 monster from your hand, which is pretty relevant. And from there, and of course, if you use 2+ monsters, it's every monster that's normal or special summoned to one of his link points gains 300 attack. So it's really great and definitely a must. So that's it for the links. We run 3 Synchros. Black Cruz Dragon, which helps nuke the board. We got Trishula, which banishes 1 card in your opponent's hand, field, and graveyard, and it does not target, so that's why Trishula is really amazing. And of course, Beals. Gotta have Beals. And we only run 3 Xyz monsters, which is Doka, which negates monster effects, 2 copies of Lagia, which negates summons, and spells and traps too, so that's why Lagia is really great. So yeah, this deck's really great. I actually like it. Pretty well competitive, so if you guys want to give this deck a shot, I highly recommend it. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.